It's again, it's very controversial.
Okay, let me hear it. I think you should
Just
put on your glasses for this. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
my controversial
Okay, yeah. If
glasses.
that's your controversial glasses, you should let me hear your controversial opinion. Talking about the Matrix now and assuming
Exactly.
everybody watched it, but that movie kind of shocked me because
They
it's
should.
life. It's life, you know. That's what
I
life
think
is.
everyone should watch it.
I
It
do.
should
That's
be
life
obligation.
changing.
It should be in part of school. You have to watch The
Watch
Matrix.
The Matrix. I agree. Why
Um,
didn't I make that one of those films that you have to do a film review on? When I read this book, I really wished I could turn back time and read it again in my 20s. Well, I can't do that, but I can talk to Charles Swanepoel, who did read this book and who is in his 20s. So today we're discussing The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Charles, you read this book. What did you think?
Thanks for having me. I I came across, I think, on Audible. I saw it was on one of my recommended books, and at the time I was very just getting into investing, saving, and so I thought, let me read it, and it was it's cliche, but it was eye-opening because he just talks about investing and saving in a different way, and I think Morgan just the way he wrote the book appeals to a broad audience as well.
That's exactly how you said. He actually just shows you a different way to think about it because you'll always hear the
Yeah.
same over and over. And he literally just shares his perspective and point of view in it, and he just shows you a different point of view. So I like it. I mean, for instance, if I read this one piece that I quite liked, it's early on in the book. They say, "I can't tell you what to do with your money because I don't know you. I don't know what you want. I don't know when you want it, and I don't know why you want it." So I work in the financial advice industry, so I deal with this regularly. People want me to give them answers. They want me to solve their problems, but they don't know what they want, and they don't know what they want to do with their money or what their money must do for them. And it's very difficult for me to help someone if they don't have the answer to that question. How do you feel about that? I mean, if I had to ask you, what does he say? Yeah, what do you want? What do you want money to do for you? What would you say?
I think it's different. It's changing rapidly as well. Um, so I think if you ask people in different stages of their life, it's going to be a completely different answer. But I see money as obviously people say money won't make you happy, but the reality is you need money in today to survive.
Mm.
And if you want to enjoy life just a little bit, you need even more money. So I see it as it's not everything, but it definitely is a tool to get more out of life, to enjoy it more. And I think that's why most people um, chase, they're not necessarily chasing money, but they're chasing freedom. And unfortunately, money plays a huge role in freedom. So I think freedom is the most important for me. I would definitely like to have freedom. And these days on social media, it seems normal for 20-year-olds to be financially free, which is not good it's not good to see that everywhere. I don't think so. And that's definitely what's changing very fast, is this normalizing of being financially free in your 20s. And if you're not, then you're behind. Then something's wrong with you.
Yeah, and I also think that a lot of what you see, especially on Insta, I must talk about the Insta life. So it's not
Mm.
real. People try to portray that. I know a lot of it is real, but then you got to consider their history. Where does that money come from? Is it inherited and stuff like that? But yeah, it's the Insta life as a reality, and it does make it very difficult for people to try and live up to that or kind of be happy with your own circumstances if that is what you see other people are used to. But you mentioned something now that made me think, yes, you said money can't buy happiness, but maybe it can. But I think money can't buy happiness, but the lack of money brings unhappiness.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of money, but a lot of people with a little bit of money, they're not rich, but they're living within their means, and therefore they are happy and they are content with their circumstances, which brings them happiness. But then there are people with a whole lot of money, but they've got a lot of unhappiness in their personal life, so that money is not bringing them happiness. So I think it's when you're struggling and you can't pay your dues and you got a lot of debt, that's when you're unhappy, which means you have the lack of money. So yeah, maybe we should write a book that says money can't bring you happiness, but the lack of it will make you unhappy. Maybe that's not a bad
It's
idea.
it's very true. What's that saying that says you can have 100 problems until something goes wrong with your health, and then you only have one problem.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what's most likely to help you in that case is money. You need money to stay healthy. Unfortunately, that can help a lot. If you have money, you can solve a lot of issues regarding health as well.
Yeah.
So I think it shouldn't be overlooked, the importance. It shouldn't be, people shouldn't tell you to not chase money, or if you do, then you're evil. There's a line definitely, but it's a good thing just to be able to look after yourself and the people around you.
I agree. I think, however, money should be a result and not the target. So the thing you chase, if you say you can't chase money, I think the thing you chase is going to be the thing that brings you the money. So don't chase the money directly, because that's when you start getting criminal activity, I think. And that becomes evil.
Hmm.
But when you have a target and you're chasing that target and it results in giving you a lot of money, then that's great. So kind of we're saying to each other, chase the right target, the one that will give you money. And then that should kind of be what you're chasing. But yeah, because I do agree, money can't make you evil. But yeah, if that is all you want and you're constantly chasing that, then I think you are going to not see the rest of, the important things around you. Okay, let's read another
Yeah.
piece that says, go out of your way to find humility when things are going right and forgiveness or compassion when they go wrong, because it's never as good or as bad as it looks. What do you think?
So the humility part, what do you think he meant
I think
by
he
what he
means
said in terms of finances?
here he's probably talking about investment specifically. So if you bought a share, because I mean, we all have heard stories about people, I don't want to mention specific cryptocurrencies and stuff, but we've all heard people that brag, yo, I got this right, I made so much money and blah, blah, blah. And then the very next day they lose it all overnight, and then they're like dead quiet and you don't hear a word. Then they're not saying anything and they're not admitting they made a mistake, or perhaps they did, so I think it's about investing
Yeah.
where if you got it right, be humble and say, oh, thank you, because it's luck, because it's a lot to do. Yes, there's risk, skill involved, sorry, but it's a lot of luck. So yay, I was lucky. I'm so grateful that I got this right, rather than bragging about your investment skills. And then same way when you
Hmm.
got it wrong, to say, not to torture yourself about it and say, it was luck, wasn't on my side. We're just going to try again, type of thing.
Because most people spend money to signal to others they've got status,
Exactly.
and that means why do you have to do that? If you were truly secure in yourself, there's no reason to do that because you're happy with who you are. You don't need validation to prove that.
Less ego, more wealth. So I think
Hmm.
that's exactly what you're trying to say now. Less ego, more wealth. So if you're not chasing the fancy car, I'm trying to avoid using brand names here. So it's fancy house and the fancy car and everything, but you are humble and staying in an average, I'm not saying you have to live in a dump, but staying in an average house and driving an average car. And then you have more money because you didn't spend that money or make debt to buy yourself that ego with a watch or the car so I think you've got a good point there. In fact, saving money is the gap between your ego and your income, and wealth is what you don't see. So wealth is created by suppressing what you could buy today, in order to have more stuff or more options in the future. No matter how much you earn, you will never build wealth unless you can put a lid on how much fun you can have with your money right now, today. Gosh, it's like you read the book, Shawl. It's like,
Mm. Yeah, I think also most people, ego can cause people to go broke trying to be rich.
okay, so let's look at this piece that he wrote. Become okay with a lot of things going wrong. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune, because a small minority of things account for the majority of outcomes. No matter what you're doing with your money, you should be comfortable with a lot of stuff not working. I think that's very important. A lot of people go, especially into investing. I'm trying to think now if you can apply this to life, but let's talk through it, then we'll see. A lot of people however, do go into investing thinking, oh man, I'm going to make a lot of money and everything's going to go wrong. Right. I think if you go in with a mindset that a lot of things can go wrong, you will make better decisions. Because if you decide in a bad time in the market to draw all your money, it's the worst decision you can make because you're realizing all those losses. You should actually just sit through that storm and, the whole concept of buy low, sell high type of thing. So I think if you go in with the mindset that, a lot of things can go wrong without being stupid and not taking any risk, we'll talk about that later, then you have a more balanced approach and the chances of you making non-emotional decisions in different times is better. Otherwise, if you go in there just expecting the good and the first bad thing that happens, then you're going to make a wrong decision and get out of the boat.
I think emotion, they talk about it in all investing books. It applies to everything. If you chase success, if you chase any dream, let's say content creation that we both are, we both create content. And if you see a video not performing well and you react emotionally and you say, I'm never going to do this again, it's not going to get you anywhere. And just realize that the biggest thing in key to success is consistency. And that applies to investing. That's why they say dollar cost average, because that's so consistent that you will get good days and bad days. So I think consistency is everything, and emotion makes consistency very hard.
Okay, so he says use money to gain control over your time. Oh, this brings me back to what you said in the beginning. Money means to you. You said you wanted freedom. So this kind of underlines that. He says, because not having control of your time is such a powerful and universal drag on happiness. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want to, pays the highest dividend that exists in finance. Wow. I think that's the crux. That's where we want to be, is where we are not reliant on our salaries. We don't live from month to month. We can actually be free, like you said, and you can do what you want when you want it because you got money in the bank. I think that's a definition of financial freedom. What do you think?
Exactly, yeah. Just being able to control your time is everything. That's why you see rich people and billionaires buying jets because they can get to places quicker, because they'd rather spend millions of dollars to save an hour on a flight, or just standing in the queues because they realize that as soon as you have a certain amount of money, then time becomes the most important currency.
Someone once told me that the thing that you spend the most time with is, well, we all know that they say that that's the thing you will become, okay? But it also shows that that is the worship. And that's now from a I suppose, a bit of a religion point of view. But yeah, it just struck me at that time because it's true. The thing that you spend most of your time with is probably the thing that's most important to you. So, and sometimes we're forced to spend time on things that is not necessarily important to us. And then you have to realign, readjust your priorities to make sure that you actually spend your time on the thing that's most important to you. So that on the one side, and then on the other side, I think it's important to, let me tell you this story, this will explain it. Okay, so this guy was away for work all the time, okay? His family never saw him. He traveled the world. He was extremely rich. He had a lot of money. And when his wife complained, or his children said, like, we barely see you, we don't even know you, kind of thing, he just said, you know what, I'm doing this for you, so that you don't have to suffer financially, so that you've got money, so that you can have your heart's desires. And one day when I have enough, when I've made enough, then I'm going to retire and I'm going to spend all my time on you and we're going to spend it together. And that's what he did. So he retired early. He didn't even wait until 65. He retired early. And he said, okay, fine. Now here I am. I've got enough money now. You all have enough money. I set up my legacy. Let's spend time together. And 2 weeks after that, he had a heart attack and he died. So, and this is a real true story. It is not even something I made up. Okay. So I think it's very important that we live in the moment as well and not be so focused on the future and not being so focused on attaining that specific target that we forget to appreciate what we have right now in this present moment.
It's weird. We struggle to live in the moment. That's one of our biggest, and social media is making it worse.
Yeah,
But yeah, time. I think it goes both ways because I think people we were made to like seek challenges or you
adventure.
need some resistance, adventure, challenges. Otherwise, it just yeah, it's not good for you to not have anything to work towards.
Words, I agree.
But that's
Yeah,
also one of the things that I'm thinking about a lot is like risk. What's your stance on risk? Don't you think most people are focusing too much on playing it safe or not losing money, and then in the process they risk not making any more money?
I think in the financial world, we talk about risk tolerance versus risk profile versus risk need. So I think that is kind of important to figure out for yourself. It's like, I find, so I'm a very careful person in my nature. I can't change that. That's how I am. I don't like taking, daring my life, risking my life, or I will read labels. I will live within boxes because it makes me happy. When I live outside of that box, I am not happy. Okay. So that's your personality. So that's the one thing, that's your profile. But you have to understand that in certain things you have to take a risk. For instance, if you're really, really sick and you're dying and they want to try a new thing on you, treatment on you, and you say no because you're too scared to try it, then you die anyway. So you got to then ask yourself, okay, but I need to take this risk. And then you have to
Yeah.
kind of adjust your risk ability to tolerate more risk. In everything in life, we always have that decision, and our brains make that decision for us in an instant. But it defaults to all the previous decisions you've made. So if you tend to always make the
Mm,
safe decision, your brain is always going to recommend to you to make the safe decision. So you need that third party, that advisor, that YouTube video talk show, that TED
exactly.
talk, that whatever, to take off the blindfolds and remind you that there are other options for you to consider. And you should get out of your lane. You should pass that car because other people have done it successfully, so you can too. And the moment you do that, you are able to adjust your risk tolerance, which means next
Mm.
time when you have a high risk need, you are able to make the right decision.
That excites me that part you said because I wanted to ask you this question, like how much of people's financial strategy do you think is truly their own, and how much of it is just inherited thinking, like from their parents? It's scary to think that, let's take an 18-year-old. So where does their worldview and beliefs come from? I would
Exactly.
say a large part comes from school, the influence at school, teachers, the people. And in general, if you think about the average teacher, they are pretty conservative. They are safe. They're not very risk. That's just an assumption. It could be generalization. As soon as you leave, as soon as you finish school, then you have to realize now you have to, you've been formed into this person, your beliefs, it comes from people you've been surrounded with, but it doesn't have to be that way. So you have to explore, you have to see what's out there, um, you have to decide for yourself what's true or not. In school, I hated reading, didn't like reading books because it didn't really interest me. And until after school, I realized, okay, now I can read whatever I want. So I don't have to read Romeo and Juliet. I can actually read business books. And that's when it clicked. It's like, okay, I can read a book that took someone 40 years of their life, they dedicated towards the topic. I can read that in a week, and I know, like, I gained so much knowledge in just a week. And it's almost like a loophole. What's that quote that says, the man, the man who doesn't read has no advantage over the man who cannot read.
Wow. Wow, that is so true.
Mm.
Well, we both read this book, and I think we've hit some some good points here. I've got two more things that I wanted to discuss with you from the book, but what you just said, I wanted to say something on. The past, the perspective, the perception. I honestly don't think, and there might be a lot of philosophers that will throw stones at me now, but I honestly don't think anyone ever has a unique thought. I think everything we think, you have heard somewhere, or your brain has drawn a conclusion or formed an opinion about something you've seen or heard, or education, or the way you were raised by your parents. So, however, there's two ways to respond to everything in life. You can either become a product of your circumstances and just continue the loop, what you call the loop, the cycle, and just continue to stay in that rut and that way of doing things, that way of thinking, which a lot of people do. And you know what? Ignorance is bliss. So if you're never confronted with a different opinion or a different way of living or a different way of thinking, you're going to be fairly happy in the matrix. But it's when you get confronted with that blue and red pill, when you see something, when you hear something, or unfortunately, when something really traumatic happens to you, like a life event, that's when you start to realize, but wait, there's an alternative. There is outside of the matrix. I can think for myself. I can do for myself. And then you still have a choice if you want to take the blue or the red pill. So you ask me from my clients, from my experience, if my clients, if their frame of reference and their perspective is influenced by their past. I find that it's influenced in two ways. Some clients grew up rich with their parents spending very little time with them. And then they say, I don't want to have a lot of money. I want to have a happy family. Or they will say, oh, I grew up having everything my heart desired and I want the same for my children. So it's literally about how you experienced growing up and whether you're going to want the exact same thing or you're going to want the exact opposite thing. And I think both comes with its pros and its cons. Because if you're trying to duplicate what your parents did, you're probably going to fail because everyone is unique and everyone's circumstances are unique. And you're probably not going to get it right. And you're going to constantly serve that frame of reference, that perception that you have about how things should be. And on the other hand, if you chase doing exactly opposite of what your parents did, you are probably going to set yourself up to fail as well, because I don't think you can really, really, really get away from that. I think it is always going to be your default. And whenever you're in a time of crisis, you're going to default back to that initial foundation that was built into you as a child. So that's my experience, and that's what I think.
I have to slightly disagree, not disagree, but I think that's why I'll go back to what I said earlier, that you have the ability to rewire the way you think and what you believe, but it's not easy. And that's what I wanted. I didn't say that earlier. It's not, it's really, I think it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to change the way you think, because it's over years of your life. You've been almost programmed. Your brain is a computer and you've been programmed to think a certain way. But you can change that to a degree, but it's so difficult for most people, because that's going to mean cutting off old friends, the things you consume. You have to change what you consume every day. Every piece of content has to contribute to what you want to believe. And if it's not going to change. So it's difficult, but I think that's why I read books. That's why I selectively choose like what I consume, the content, to change the way I think, because I'm not happy with the way my current beliefs. It doesn't necessarily align with the life I want one day. And I realize that if you want something different, you have to do something different. Then you have to believe differently. So
I coincidentally watched a podcast just the other day. I actually wanted to bring that up a little bit later. Okay, let's keep that still for later. But I want to do this exercise he did with us. Okay. He was trying to prove that your brain cannot think in negatives. Okay. So I'm going to give you an instruction now, and let's see if you can follow it. Don't think about an elephant. It's impossible It's impossible. You cannot train your brain with a negative. So if you're going to
That's
tell yourself, don't be like your parents or don't believe in this, your brain can't do that. What
mm-mm.
you have to do, and it's actually what you said, is you have to reinforce your thought patterns and do the positive. So you're going to have to force your brain to go in the opposite direction. And it is very difficult. And I agree that it's possible. But yes, it's going to take a lot of commitment. And it's never going to, I don't think it's ever going to be your default. It's going to be constant work.
Think, yeah, to a degree, I think that's why it's so difficult that I'm reading books about how to do it, not just reading books about business. I'm currently reading a book, Reality Transfer,
Okay.
and it's a lot. And the other day I read or I listened to the part where he said, whatever you think about, you will attract into your life. So if you let's say you use the example of apples. If someone really dislikes apples, and they keep every day they wake up and they think, I hate apples. I don't like apples. They will find that apples just start to appear everywhere. There will be more apples in your life and you will start to notice it everywhere, even though you hate it, just because you're thinking about apples the whole time. And that's the negative part. So you have to completely not think about if you just don't give it any thoughts, just don't think about it. Then you will find, okay, you're not seeing apples anymore.
I suppose it's like that, what they call it, the secret, the law of attraction. So whatever you spend
Hmm.
your time think about, talk about is what's going to come your way. But what I wanted to say now, I wonder if it's, sometimes when you've never seen a certain car, you have never heard about the brand or anything, and then someone tells you about it, and suddenly wherever you drive, you just see it. It's almost like your
Exactly.
brain shuts off at some point for more information. It says, you don't need this information, so you don't need to see that brand of car. And then suddenly someone introduces you to that brand of car, and then your brain says, oh, now you know about this, so you got to be aware of it. And then you just see it all the time.
They say your brain is designed to help you solve problems. But for that you need to clearly you need a clear image of what you want. Conscious will help you find ways. That's why you have to constantly think in a way that aligns with what you want. Think about the negatives, what you don't want. Then your subconscious will also start to think towards those things. Um, and even the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he.
It's true.
So,
And the power of the tongue. It speaks about the power of the tongue as well. So what did
yeah.
they say? You can bring life with the word. In the
Hmm.
Bible. So I agree with you. I think we don't realize the power of our brains. Anyway, so let's move
Yeah.
on. We're way off topic now. We talk about psychology, but not of money. But
Hmm.
let's reiterate the next piece of this book. He says, save, just save. You don't need a specific reason to save. And then he goes on about why. But I think this comes to buying freedom. So I think it's important that you build a pot, almost like a savings pot is what I call it, into your planning where you're not saving for a specific reason. You are just saving for life being unpredictable, for unforeseen circumstances.
I think um, you saving is good, and I think for most, it's again people's relationship to risk. That's where it comes in. Also, where you are in life. I'm 23 years old, so risk makes
Oh,
a
I'm
lot more sense
24.
for me. Exactly. So for both of us, risk makes a lot of sense. You should take the biggest risks of your life right now.
Oh,
Um, when I just out of school, when I got an income, I started saving and investing a lot. I think it was upwards of 35%, maybe a bit more. I invested into my tax-free savings account, and I did that for almost 2 years, I think. And then I know if I read a book or I watched a video or podcast or something, and it's just you've got so much time left at that stage. I was 19 years old. What if you use that money to improve a skill, to start a business, buy a camera to make content, which could improve your income by so much, then you can invest more. So you have to decide, are you going to play it safe and save and invest, or will you use that money to potentially make more money? That's why at this stage of my life, I think risk makes more sense to me. That's why I quit my job to try and pursue making content.
But I think the key is balance. Because here's the thing, if you do put everything into savings from the beginning, you are quite right. You're going to feel trapped and you are not going to have freedom and you're not going to have a life. And you've got to live. I mean, man, we have time. Time is finite. It's not like we have infinite time. So I
Mm,
agree with you 100%, but it's about balance. Here's, for instance, just for an example, what to try and explain or illustrate what I mean when I say balance. Some people ask me, I have a little bit of money now, so what it was tax rebate or whatever. Should I pay off my debt or should I put it towards my retirement annuity? You know, I can go into a long technical discussion here for why I would say what I would say, but here is my usual answer to them. Balance, do both. Rather put a little bit into your debt and a little bit into your RA. You know what? And I don't think I need to explain this to you, Charles. Postponed savings. It's been proven over and over again that the later you start to save, the longer you postpone to save. It doesn't matter if the person that saved from day one saved a quarter of what you saved, okay? You just can't catch up with time because
mm,
compounding is just too powerful. So to me, it's about balance. Rather reduce the amount you're saving to as little as possible and still live that life and still build that future than to not save at all. And you come to a point where maybe something didn't work out or you weren't successful, or which is fine because we got to make mistakes to learn. That's how we learn. And then you got to start over, and then you just never get to the point where you can actually start. So I feel just start, even if it's with $50 a month, just start. But yeah, obviously you got to earn an income to save. So define the cost of success and be ready to pay it because nothing worthwhile is free. It's funny, that kind of hooks onto what we just said. And remember that most financial costs don't have a visible price tag. Uncertainty, doubt, regret are common costs in the financial world. They're often worth paying, but you have to view them as fees, not penalties. So I think that's exactly what we just said. If you've got a success mindset, okay, and you're taking risk to achieve it, okay, there are going to be mistakes, but you are going to pay a price. You're going to pay a price that
mm,
maybe you can't go out every night like all your friends because you took a risk in quitting your job to try and attain a higher success, you know, and that's the price you have to pay. But you shouldn't see it as a sacrifice. You should see it as
mm,
an investment into your goal, into your future. And I think that's with everything in life, that is what your mindset should be. But some people give up with the first obstacle they get and they feel they got to start over. And I actually said that a few seconds ago. I just realized that. And it's not true. You're not starting over. You're just starting a new chapter. And I think
mm.
that is the psychology of money, you know, is to realize that there's so many things you got to do. You can only do one at a time. And you don't have to be 100% successful from day one.
No one's going to be. Yeah, it just doesn't work that way,
No, it
unfortunately.
doesn't. It doesn't.
It's Yeah, I think that's definitely, as you said, risk, uncertainty. That's the entry fee. I feel most people, their lives are not uncomfortable enough to change anything, and also just comfortable enough to, yeah, to stay the same. And I think that's a dangerous place to be for myself. Be careful to like about who you listen to, because obviously if you listen to someone that's quite a bit older, their worldview is different, and at that stage of their life, that advice that they give you, it's 100% true for someone in their place, in their
True.
position. But if they really think, like, if you were 23 years old today, um, like what would you do differently? What would you, in terms of financial strategy? So,
I think if I just continued what I did when I was 23 and not allow life's temptations to lure me away from my target, I would have been much better off. I was such an avid saver and I was happy. I spent money, I made debt, but it was all in control. And I was very disciplined in how I budgeted and how I saved my money. And I studied part-time, so I still had my goal in mind. So I think I started off really, really well. And then I just got to some point where my wants for a bigger fridge and a nicer bed and a prettier wardrobe, where it just started to drag on my happiness, and I couldn't resist the temptation of taking up one of those credit offers that you keep getting in the mail, and I took it up, and then once that bit me, it was like it's addictive, and then the power of credit. And that's why I have no credit at the moment, apart from still paying with my house. And
Yeah.
yeah, my point is just, I think if I stuck to my wit then and had a more content and satisfactory type of gratitude and appreciation of what I had at the time, and not desired after more, and stayed out of debt, man, I would have been 10 years ahead from where I am now. Because getting out of that debt took me a long, long time. And yeah, now
Mm.
that I'm out of it, I'm definitely but more free, but I'm still 10 years behind because of it. And yeah, I think that was my big mistake. So if I could go back to 23, I would have just told myself, keep doing what you're doing, because I can see that this would result in a much better outcome than falling for that. Now, just sleep on that bed. You at least you have a bed. Be grateful that you have a bed. Just stay in that small house. You don't need a bigger house. You are quite okay in
Mm.
this house. Live within your means. You can't want to drive a specific car if you can't afford to pay it. If you can't buy it cash, kind of, there are things that you need debt for, but then make sure it's the repayments is something within your means, and that there's room for increases and all the maintenance costs that go with that thing. So yeah, I could talk about this for a long time, but I'll rather not.
I think risk, the reason most people don't take risks is they just don't have enough trust in themselves. Like, let's say younger people. And I don't think it's their fault. I think it's we in school, you are tr trained that way almost. For
Mm.
everything you do, you have to ask permission.
Mm.
And that's not the way life works. As soon as you leave school, then
Mm.
you can do stuff without asking permission. But you were wired that way to ask for permission. And I think that's the reason people avoid risk. Um, with all the advancements, I think we will see medical advancements that will help us live a bit longer. So I think, like, let's say 80 is the new 60, for example, in
For a
terms of
fact,
years.
for a fact.
And so if you can fail up until 30, 40, 50 and realize you're not even halfway, you can just restart, even though your responsibilities are more. I think people don't have to think it's too late.
Thank
Um,
you.
there's a line, obviously, but I think just we have to realize that we might be living quite a bit longer than luckily it's a good thing. The world is advancing, AI is advancing. It's just it's scary at the rate it's getting better.
I didn't read the book. I watched the video of this guy called Matt Abrams that did this book, Think Faster, Talk Smarter. And
Hmm.
I thought it was brilliant. Well, I actually want to watch it again. Um, and one of the things he did in this book, and I want to do that with you quickly. The elephant thing that I did earlier was also from this book, but I quickly want you to play along with me with this thing now, because it's a very interesting concept. It just shows you about the psychology, your brain, and it hooks on well to this conversation that we're having. Okay, so I am going to give you a invisible imaginary gift. Okay. And then you must now, on your side, you're receiving the gift. You must open it up and then tell me what's in there. And then I am going to tell you why I gave that to you. Okay, now before we start, before I give you the gift, did your brain just suggest a whole lot of stuff that could be in the box to you?
Yeah,
You're not
obviously.
allowed to use any of those. Okay. You're not allowed to use any of the suggestions your brain already gave you. You gotta give me the one the moment you actively imaginary open that box now. Okay, so here it comes. Here comes the gift. I'm sending it. It's in your hands. Open the box. What's in the box?
Camera.
A camera. I gave it to you because I thought that you could really use it in your content creation. Okay. The exercise is actually all about is trying to show you that sometimes you should learn not to listen to the first thing your brain tells you. Because sometimes your first response is one of self-defense or because our brain is trained to protect us. So your first response, what do they call it? Fight or flight. Yeah. Your first response of your brain is usually a fight and flight response, and it's not always the right one. Well, this was fun. Thanks for spending this time with me. And you never know. Maybe we can talk about Think Faster or Talk Smarter next time, or that other book that you're reading.
Exactly.
But I'll see you around.
We should do it again. See you in the next one.